Okay, let's shatter a massive illusion right out of the gate for this explainer. You think the water crisis is just some recent bad luck with droughts? Nope. And honestly, banning golf courses or feeling guilty about your almond milk isn't going to fix it. The reality? We've built a vast, incredibly complex man-made machine, and the truth of it is way more shocking than the daily headlines want you to believe. 100. That's not a prediction. That is exactly how many years this river has been mathematically bankrupt. Almost a full century. The mighty Colorado River has been structurally overallocated since the literal exact day the states first carved it up. So where is all the water actually going? Forget that completely useless advice to just turn off the tap while you brush your teeth. That's just a comforting little lie. Today, we're diving straight into the hard data. We're going to track the actual physical flow to see who or what is actively draining our most vital resource. Section 1. Who actually drained this river? Literally every single drop flowing down the Colorado is already claimed by someone holding a massive straw. If just one state, Nevada, took its legally promised share in a single massive gulp, water levels in Lake Mead would instantly plummet by 45 inches, nearly 4 feet, gone in a flash. And get this, they are the absolute smallest user on the river. California uses 54 feet a year. The sheer scale of this consumption is just mind-boggling. But here's the real slap in the face. This river was completely doomed before we even took our first sip. A century ago, the founding engineers made a catastrophic miscalculation. They measured the river's flow during a weirdly wet decade in the 1920s. But modern tree ring data tells a completely different, much darker story. This region is actually wired for megadroughts that last decades. We literally built an empire on a flood that didn't even exist. Which brings us to part 2, the fatal trap of paper water. This right here exposes the ultimate flaw in the whole system. You've got paper water, that's the total fantasy amount politicians legally guaranteed to everyone back in the 1920s. And then you've got wet water, the harsh physical reality of what's actually flowing through the dirt today. They don't match up at all. For most of the 20th century, we could hide this massive accounting error because we just couldn't physically use it all yet. But now? Oh, we absolutely can. Just look at how this disaster snowballs decade after decade. Back in the 1920s, they divide up imaginary water. Then, in 1944, lawmakers promise another 1.5 million acre-feet to Mexico, fully knowing there were already shortages. Fast forward to 1985, and our consumption hits double the river's actual long-term flow. And looking ahead to 2060, the projected deficit is just off the charts. The math is completely, hopelessly broken. Part 3. So where did all that water actually go? Spoiler alert, it's not just watering thirsty desert lawns. First, millions of gallons get pumped deep underground to fracture rocks for natural gas. Second, it's heavily used to extract rare metals, like the lithium sitting inside the smartphone you might be holding right now. And third, we literally force it uphill, pushing it right across the Continental Divide to feed cities that aren't even in the watershed. Every single time you buy a new piece of tech or crank up the gas heat, you are actively burning through drops of the Colorado River that will never, ever return to the ecosystem. We've essentially hot-wired this river to bleed out in every possible direction. We're talking 6 million acres of desert farmland, tech industry mining, fracking wells, distant cities like LA, Denver, and Cheyenne. We've built this colossal interconnected economy that relies 100% on a completely exhausted source. I mean, in Colorado, the exact same water gets used more than half a dozen times before it even crosses the state line. It's wild. Section 4. The collapsing system. The data we're looking at is incredibly grim. Way back in 1985, our total consumption was already hitting 28.7 million acre-feet. But the river's actual long-term average flow, it's roughly half of that. Half! We've been operating on this massive, totally unsustainable deficit for decades. And knowing all that, we just kept building anyway. Now factor in the future, and the equation goes from bad to impossible. First up, climate change. It's expected to literally evaporate up to 30% of whatever flow is left by mid-century. Second, you have exploding urban demand. These massive out-of-basin megacities are fiercely demanding their legally promised water. They want their imaginary paper water from a river that is physically turning to dust. Which brings us to this staggering number, 3 million. By 2060, the government's own median projections show a deficit of 3 million acre-feet of water. That means millions of people, entire metropolitan areas, and vast agricultural empires are going to be legally entitled to water that simply does not exist anymore. The final section, the ultimate rescue plan. So how do we get out of this? Well, as water expert John Fleck points out, some sort of grand bargain is absolutely going to have to restrict the number of straws sucking water out of this river. Just pointing at dusty old contracts from the 1920s and screaming, "We're entitled to this," won't save anyone. Nature doesn't care about our paperwork. We are facing a massive, incredibly painful reduction in who actually gets to use this river. There just isn't enough wet water to cover everyone's legal fantasy. I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought. Our entire modern civilization in the American West is built on a 100-year-old accounting error. When the imaginary law of the river finally collides with a completely empty riverbed, will our modern infrastructure even survive? What actually happens to our giant cities, our food supply, and our tech industry when the math finally catches up with us? That is absolutely something to chew on the next time you turn on your